Do you want to learn how to make a bush like this that shows individual stem structure and looks a lot like either a raspberry or blackberry bush? If so, watch this video and I'll show you how I did it. Hello fellow modelers, Bruce here again. Just want to take a few minutes to talk about another very useful item to have in our repertoire for modeling, especially when it comes to scenery work, and that is jute twine, J-U-T-E twine. Comes in a variety of thicknesses and a variety of colors, some of it more brownish and some of it quite golden color. This one I've teased apart quite a bit, and you can start to see some potential and maybe get some ideas of how we can use this in our modeling. As far as thicknesses are concerned, I measured this one, and it's about 4 to 5 millimeters in diameter, and that becomes a very useful size for most of our applications. If you went to a hardware store, which is where you probably would go, although it's available online also, but if you want to see it up in person, then go to a hardware store and ask for jute twine. It's used a lot by gardeners to tie up plants and tie up packages for mailing and so forth. It's been around for a long time. It can come as thick as a cable to tie up a boat to a dock, so you have plenty of different sizes to look for. What they all have in common is that they are all just twisted strands. Now if you look at this, and I don't want to get too close, but let me come here, and you see I'm twisting it apart, you can see that this twine has 3 major sub-twistings involved with it, 3 separate bundles. And for some of the applications that I'm going to show you, you want to separate it down to the individual bundles, and in some cases you want to leave 2 of those bundles twisted together, and in some cases 3. I guess, you know, if you're familiar with it at all, you have probably seen modelers use lengths of this twine squeezed between 2 wires and then twisted to capture these all the way up the length of the wire to make evergreen trees. That's not an application I've ever used. Probably do it once just to say I've done it, but I want to show you some much simpler applications for this twine. One of those simpler applications, and this kind of reminds you of it if you look at this, is you can cut this up, keep it in its stranded form like this, cut it up into very short lengths depending on your scale, and you can make piles of hay. You can glue it to a substructure to make hay bales, either the round type or the rectangular type. And I'm going to show you an application today of how to use these to make a nice type of weed or bush that we don't have available from vendors like Woodland Scenics or Scenic Express. I'll show you a short clip in a few seconds of a little hay pile that I have on a scene. You'll get the idea of that. Well, I had promised to show you a little hay pile, and here you can see one of my milk cows chomping down, and it looks like that goat on the other side of the pasture is eyeing up the pile as well. Okay, back to the main video. In the meantime, let's look at how you can use these to make those weeds or small bushes. First of all, you want to cut a length, heat up your glue gun and get it ready. I usually do this when I've been using the glue gun for another purpose anyway, so it's hot, which is the case today. I've already used it for that other purpose. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to separate this into its 3 separate smaller bundles, each of which I'll show you is many strands. Here, as you can see, kind of an idea of how you would use 3 bundles to start making a bush. I'm going to be using the glue gun to glue the bottoms together so that the strands don't come apart. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make this a 3-bundle one right now. Now I'm cutting this much longer than I will for my HO scale weeds, or bushes, I keep saying weeds. But you want it a certain length so your fingers don't get into hot glue. And now I'm going to just put glue, make sure you get all 3 sides captured. Go all the way around it. Now I've put down on the paper some parchment paper, which will just make it easier for this to get picked up after the glue dries. And now I'm going to just put that down on the parchment paper and hold it in place until the hot glue dries. Okay, now one of those silly spider webs. When this dries, and let me, I guess, zero in on it a little bit closer. When that dries, and I want to make a large bush out of this one, I'm going to cut these 3 separate twistings here, these 3 separate bundles, to different lengths. One short, one medium, one a little bit higher. And then you're going to open those up, which I'm going to show you on a single bundle how to do it. And just keep teasing it until you get a shape of a bush that you like. And at that point, you know, spray it with a spray adhesive of your favorite type, anything from heavy-duty hairspray up to one of the, you know, I have Krylon spray adhesive, I have 3M spray adhesive, whatever. You just give it a shot of that and sprinkle on some very fine ground foam, and you have yourself a very good-looking bush, which I'm going to show you in a minute. In the meantime, let's do a couple of smaller ones. Again, I'm just cutting it to a little over an inch just to keep my fingers away from the bottom here. Get your glue gun, and the key is once you have your glue gun and your jute twine out is don't just make one bush, make a couple dozen bushes. Set it down on the parchment paper. Okay, let's do another one. You know, the things that we normally use for bushes, which actually look pretty good either in person or on photography, is like Woodland Scenics cluster foliage, or they have a product that they call weeds, and they have one that they call bushes, and they have one that they call underbrush, and they all make nice additions to our scenery. But what they don't have is an individual structure that reminds you of branches of a larger, you know, one of the larger bushes, like a raspberry bush. For this next step in the process of making our jute bushes, you're going to need a few supplies. Obviously you're going to need an adhesive, because we are going to be sprinkling foam onto the jute to make the leaves on the bush. And I think this is everybody's favorite, a sticky hairspray, in this case Aquanet Extra Super Hold. Whichever brand you have, usually the least expensive and the heavier duty, the better it works as an adhesive. And you can also use one of the spray adhesives that are not labeled as a hairspray, but this works just fine. You're going to need some fine ground foam of your favorite color. This is Woodland Scenics Blended Turf, which is kind of a blend of greens, which I think looks good on these little bushes. You're going to need something to hold the jute bush while you spray the Aquanet on it. And if you use tweezers, you're going to get them all gummed up with the hairspray, and then you're going to get all green stuck to it, and you'll be constantly cleaning these things. So that's not what I do. You certainly could, just make sure you clean it up afterwards. A little isopropyl alcohol does a good job. What I do whenever I want to hold something, either for painting or in this case spraying with an adhesive, if it's a small enough item, I use these tongue depressors made for hobbyists. You buy them in packs of 100 or more. And I put a little double-sided tape on the end. You peel that off, and all that's left is the sticky. And your jute twine will stick right in there fine, and then you can spray it and so forth when you're ready. The tape I used, I've talked about before. I use a couple different kinds of double-sided tape in my modeling, and this is kind of in the middle of them as far as how sticky they are, how aggressive they hold on to something. If you've seen my YouTube video on painting little people, which was one of my first videos and by far the most popular in terms of views, I hold those little people on these tongue depressors with this photo memory mounting tape, and it's put out by Pioneer. So I always have this in stock, and it's got a white covering on it so it's not sticky, and you peel it off and cut off a piece, and then you pull the white off and you're left with the sticky. So now I can just hold this out at a distance and spray my jute twine with it. So yeah, those are the supplies. Thought I would just go into that. Some modeling friends asked me, what is jute twine? Well, jute twine is used a lot in gardening and used to be used a lot in wrapping packages for the mails and so forth. It's a natural fiber. I believe it comes from the bark of the jute plant, which is grown commercially, and comes in different thicknesses. And this is 2-ply, and if you can read that, or excuse me, 3-ply. You can also get 2-ply, you can get 4-ply, and you can get a lot thicker than this. You can even get it in colors. I was in Ace Hardware to pick this up because, quite frankly, I need some for gardening, tying up my dahlias and so forth this summer, and I was out. And I see that it now comes in green, which, if you were using this to make evergreen trees, using the wire method, might be a good idea. But I prefer, the natural color. It's like the burlap color, and that's perfect for these bushes. So that's what jute is. All right. In the next part of the video, we'll actually show how you prepare these jute pieces for making a bush. Be right back. Okay, now to make this look like it's a bunch of branches on a small bush. There's the blob of hot glue, nice and dry now, and because we pressed it down onto the paper, it has a nice flat base which you can put white glue on later to glue this into your scenery. Remember that even though this is just one strand of these 3-ply jute pieces, it itself is made up of many, many smaller strands of jute. And if I unscrew it a little bit here, untwist it, you can start to see all of the fibers that are in there. And now what you want to do is start pulling those fibers apart and spreading them out in every direction of the compass if you can, although often because of the twist that it's been in so long, that's hard to do, and you have to be happy with the pieces coming out in maybe 2 or 3 directions. But the good thing is that wild bushes grow in all shapes and sizes. But you start pulling it apart, teasing them apart here, and you start to see that you have what will become very fine branch structure for the bush. And don't forget, you're going to make this bush a scale, depending on what scale you're in, but a scale 3 to 4 feet tall. You can make it down as low as 2 feet if you want, but it's going to be one of the taller bushes in the area, coming above the ground foam that you put down. So you just keep working on this until you get whatever you're satisfied with, quite frankly. And sometimes if you put your finger down in the middle, you help get it to come out in all the directions. So just spend a little time with it, and pretty soon you get something that looks like a bush. So I'm going to come in a little bit here. So you see I have it going out in all the directions right now. Now I left it long. Remember, I had cut it to about 1.25 inches just to handle it with the hot glue. That's too tall for a bush that I want anyway, in HO scale. So I'm going to cut this back now, but it's better to do all the twisting and teasing of the strands while it is longer. But now I'll come in with the scissors and I'll trim those back a bit and then tease it up again. And then I'll hit it with the Aquanet. And then finally I'll drizzle some of the ground foam in. So I'm going back a ways and I'm cutting off some of the wildest, most spread out leaves by doing that. So when I'm done again, I am going to go back in there with my fingers and do some more teasing. Give it a heavy blow of my breath right down the middle of it to spread it out again a little bit. Now I'm going to put it onto the tongue depressor. And there it is prior to me putting any of the spray on. So I'm going to go spray it off camera so I don't get it all over everything. Then we'll come back and do the final step, which is putting on the ground foam. Okay, I have this rather large meat packing tray from Costco that I've cleaned off, and I like to use it for this process so that I collect all the excess ground foam. Now, you don't want to put it on so heavy that you mask the kind of the individuality of those little jute sprigs, because those are your branches. So let me see, maybe against the white background right now might be the best thing. But let's take a look at that bush here a minute, and we will zoom in on it a little bit. And can't go too close or it goes out of focus. But there you are. Put as much of the foam on as you want, but I again urge you to leave it sparse enough that you can see some of those stems. That's the whole purpose of this. If you don't want to see that, you might as well use clump foliage. Alright, that's it for this video. These you can make up by the dozens. Just next time you have your glue gun out for something else, when you're all done with it, get some jute twine and start making these things up, and I think you'll see that they're a nice addition to your scenery repertoire. Okay, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and share the video around. Alrighty, take care. Talk to you again soon.